What you just saw were scenes of my bird feeder from just 1 hour of photography, and these are the photos from this session. If you want to get the same stunning images of birds, you've come to the right place, as today we are starting to dive into a step-by-step series that is all about one of the best bird photography techniques to exist. In this episode, we're talking all the essential basics of bird feeding that you need to know before getting started feeding or doing photography. Later on, we'll talk about essential mistakes that have to be avoided to not harm with our feeding, but contribute to the well-being of the birds. I give some less special tips about techniques and strategies at the feeder to maximize your photography success, and then we'll dive deep into the practical part where we set up and build feeders together, photograph together, and see the results of what we've learned and the achievements. So let's not waste any time and get right into it. The most basic but very important question is, why would we feed birds? And the answer is simple. Where natural resources are limited, bird feeders provide much needed food and water. This is especially important during times of scarcity as during winter or drought. But also man-made environmental problems cause scarcity, just as deforestation, agriculture and above all pesticides, forest fires, flooding, contamination and so on. Unfortunately, the list is long. Now some may say it's the natural course of things, but when people just ruthlessly pursue their greed and animals have to suffer as a result, I'm happy to step in and support them no matter what anyone wants to tell me. So, when animals can't meet their basic needs properly, we can do them a favor by providing a little food and water. But not only the birds can profit from the bird feeder, we can do too. First up, it's just great to look at birds eating what you've fed to them. It just gives you a good feeling. And then there is the excitement, as you never know which bird is gonna come and what will happen. And photographically, you just don't get closer to shy birds as with the feeder. And as we photographers plan our missions or even single shots in every detail, the feeder is perfect as we can control this environment in any way we want. But we'll get into that in detail later. Besides the photography, observation plays a big role. It can be very useful to get a deeper understanding for their nature in front of our doorstep. And you just can observe singing birds in a better way. Both kids and adults can have a lot of fun, learn a lot about our native bird world, and get a bigger appreciation for our animals and our nature. And lastly, every garden where there's a feeder is so much more filled with life and beautiful bird songs and singings that just creates a great atmosphere. So what do we have to consider before setting up a feeder? The situation will be different for each of you. That's why I have made a checklist with the 5 general questions that can be applied to everyone. Let's go through them together and clarify the most important things before starting. It makes no sense to feed sunflower seeds to hummingbirds or nectar to woodpeckers. That's why you have to have a look into your local bird world and inform yourself about the species to expect. As an example, in my area in Middle Europe, I can expect a lot of singing birds like tits, finches, the robin, woodpeckers, the jay. And so I know I have to feed things they normally eat in this region, such as seeds and nuts. I could also feed mealworms or other insects to attract even more birds like the blackbird, the wren, or to attract the woodpeckers even better. But I'm not a friend of feeding animal-based products, but that's something that is totally up to you. What I do instead of feeding insects is providing water, because all of them need as much water as food. So they come in even though there is not their preferred type of food. You should whether place your feeder next to a water source if it's available, or you should provide water if there is no source around to meet 2 of their basic needs for more visits and more species at your spot. The type of feeder you should use mostly depends on where you live and how much work and money you want to invest in it. For example, when you only have your apartment's balcony to work with and you want to keep it as simple as it gets, just put some food on a plate and some water on another plate. Now if you want to pimp it up a little to make it easier for the birds to approach and make it nicer to photograph, place a stick, a branch or a piece of wood near the food, just as I did here. And as you can see, the birds found it, accepted it, and I can already photograph them from my balcony door. It took them less than 1 day to find the food. What you can also do is to place a tube feeder or a cage feeder with balls on your balcony or in your garden. Especially tits and finches love to fly to those for feeding, but it's not essentially needed. I of course also placed one on the balcony for display. As I think that it's not nice to photograph birds on these types of feeders too, I also attach branches around it so I can photograph the birds when they are there. Now if you want to get more birds in and you want more photographic possibilities, you should definitely set up a feeding platform. That also allows bigger birds to land on and profit from food and water. Platform just means you have a standing base where you can provide food and water and place materials in any way you want, so you can absolutely control the setting, just as you can see behind me. This can be a very easy setup, but still super effective and photogenic, which I will build on a very low budget in one of the next episodes, so you can copy it yourself. But it can also be a big feeder like the one behind me. This thing is the absolute dream. There is a big water course, I don't know if you can see it now, but I will show you. There is a big water course that is so deep that even the jay can bath. There is multiple opportunities for the birds to approach and land, which also ensures that our photos don't look the same all the time. And there is enough room for groups of birds coming in and even multiple species feeding and drinking at the same time. There are times in winter when there were over 15 birds at this feeder at the same time. Now the downside of this big feeder is that you need more space, especially when you want to have a hide next to it, as we have over here. There also must be clear that you are permitted to build a feeder like this. You can of course do it illegally, but if the landowner finds it, it could be removed the next time you visit, or you can get caught and have to remove it yourself, and that really hurts. Now whether you want to build a small and budget feeder station or your dream station, which we will both be building on this channel in the future, so you should definitely subscribe to see a station that will be even crazier than this one. So no matter how much you want to invest in work, time and especially money, we have to consider the spot. Obviously there must be birds, but there must also be shelter for the birds, like a little hiding place for them, like a bush in your garden or some trees near. If you're free to choose, you should definitely build it in or at a forest's edge, as this gives the birds a feeling of security. Then you should also consider the water point again. If you want to provide water, look for a spot where there is no water source around. By that you can attract and help a lot of birds in this area. But be aware that you will always have to keep the water filled, and that needs a lot of work. If you don't want to do so, just place it near a water source like a lake, a river or a creek. But by not providing water, you will lose some photo possibilities like other species or other types of shots like birds drinking and bathing. So when you want to photograph, let's say in the morning, make sure the feeder is located in a way that there is no surroundings, or at least not much surroundings, between the sun in the east and your feeder. So for display, when there's a forest where you want to place it, or a bush in your garden and the sun comes up, don't position the feeder here, as there will be no light on the birds. Instead, place it at this forest's edge. The same goes for your backgrounds, but that's the great thing about building or setting up your own feeder. You have full control about the setting, so consider your backgrounds when setting up. The last thing to consider when it comes to your location is to keep the feeder away from predators. By that I don't mean birds of prey, or the fox or coyotes or whatever kind of predator, depending on your location. In my case, I'm speaking about the cat. The cat is one of the main causes of bird deaths where I live, so make sure to keep your feeder far enough away from the ground when you have cats around. Now we have to make sure that we can hide from the birds properly, so they can feed calmly and secure while we observe and photograph. So plan in some room for a photo blind, a hide if you want to build one, or some room to just sit down with a chair and some camouflage. This way you can get very close and see things that you normally wouldn't. And that was it for now. If I could answer some of your questions, it would be very kind if you leave a like for my video. In the next episodes, I'll tell you the major mistakes you have to avoid when it comes to the feeding itself and photography, of course, and give you the essential tips that you need to know to maximize your success. If you don't want to miss any episodes of the series, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I wish you all the best. See you.